Time to build some V-dub. Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 2 of the CMK 1/35th scale Volkswagen Type 825 pickup project. So today we are going to start working on this, and that starts with sawing up the body. So this is going to be a step-by-step build, so I will be going over things in quite a bit of detail. So for those of you that have watched my channel before, you know what to expect. For those of you that may be new, what I do is I demonstrate what I'm doing, how I cut parts off, how I clean them up, etc. And then as we progress, I won't do that quite as much on video as at the beginning. So that way people don't get too overly bored. So starting with the floor pan, using my handy Tamiya cutter, I'm going to cut the floor pan part off, and I'm going to do it and leave a little bit on there. So before I get too far, I'm going to zoom this in a little bit so everybody can see what's going on. And then I'm going to take the cutter and trim it closer. See, the nice thing about these cutters is if you are very careful, you can oftentimes get by with cutting and not even having to do any sanding. I am going to sand around the edge though, because there's a little bit of flare from the molding process, but no big deal. Now sometimes you'll get these, I can't remember what they're called. It's an under or something, but the gate is molded under a flat portion. And what that does, it's most common when you have a curved area like this. It keeps from potentially screwing it up. Now in this case, I chose to cut that part off instead of cutting it here first. And that's just because I think it'll give me a little bit cleaner cut, which it did. So there we go. I think I'll take my really fine sanding stick, an 800. And this, for anybody who's interested, is an Infinity model Ultra Precision Series sanding stick. I like the size of them. They're not real big like some of them, and they do a really good job. So here is where I'm going to have to be careful. So I need to... That would be the exhaust pipe, it looks like. Now I don't have to be real careful back here because this whole back part's got to come off. So I've got to cut it here. I've got to cut it here and around like that. So what I need to do is I need to look at the body and see where it needs to be cut off. I almost hate to chop this thing up, I tell you. So let me look at some here. So I really, man, I need to make sure I don't cut off too much. So what I'm going to do, just to play it safe, because these instructions are somewhat vague. I mean, it just shows a line somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it really close here, not all the way across obviously, but like here, and then cut this part back here, because I don't want to cut too much off. I'd rather cut not enough and have to trim it back. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use my razor saw. Now this is a very fine-toothed X-Acto brand razor saw that's very old. It was my dad's back in the day, and I've been using it for years. So I'm just going to start here. Yeah, because it shows, in looking at this illustration here, it's pretty well, it's pretty far back. So I think I'm making the right decision by cutting it back like that. And it looks like it's lined up with this here. So I'm just going to use that as kind of a guide. You know what I think I'll do, just to make sure I don't screw anything up. Yeah, I'm going to cut this right up against this back fender here and here. And that'll be the first part I do. So, just going to cut really close and make sure I don't go too far over here. Now, if a person were to really screw this up, probably wouldn't be that big a deal because it is going to be covered by the bed of the vehicle. So it might not be that big of a deal. Just cut a little bit at a time and get it right up to that, this piece right here. Then I'm going to do the same thing on that side. Okay, so those are cut. So now the next thing I'm going to do is, starting back here and trying to line it up as best I can, I'm going to cut straight down and try and cut that part. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it straight off this way, and then I'll work on this curve here. So we'll just put that right there like that. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'll have to be careful to saw more in the back than in the front. You know, keep my blade angled more like this instead of like that, so I don't scratch into the floor pan. So far, so good. Okay, I'm going to have to move this out of frame because I'm going to have to do it on the edge of my desk. So give me a second. There's one side. So I just need to sand and clean it up a little bit. But I'll do that after I cut this other side off, and then I'll take a look and see what kind of approach I'm going to use for this here. Okay, there's that side. So it's looking pretty good so far. So now I need to cut that part off there. So I need to figure out how I'm going to do that. What I'm doing here, so I'm going to use these cutters here. They're my plastic. I use them for plastic, but for heavier stuff, like not fine work like I use the Tamiya cutter for. And it keeps me from damaging the Tamiya cutter. But I'm just going to trim this off. And then, I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to worry about this tailpipe. I'll probably just glue a new piece in, because it fits. It's supposed to, looks like it's supposed to come out of the back there. So I'll probably just glue a new one in there. Actually, It looks like I can probably just cut this off and sand it. So let's see here. Cut off as much material as possible to make the sanding a little bit easier. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to set that aside for now, and I'm going to cut this bed off to do a test fit. Now, I'm not going to do much of this on screen because this is not good stuff to be breathing. So I want to cut this off somewhere else where I'm not leaving this resin dust. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I think I'll start at the top and work my way down. And then, you know, touch it up with a sander. So, I'm sorry I can't do this on screen, but safety first. So, I'll come back. And here it is, cut off. It was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. And it could take a little bit of sanding, but I'm going to see how it fits on the car body once I get that cut, which is what's coming up next, because I may not have to risk trying to sand this and, you know, risk breaking it, but we'll see. So this part's done for now. So now, well, let's see how it fits on here. Looks pretty good. I mean, I don't know exactly how it's supposed to fit, but looking pretty good so far. So I'll square these up once I get this part cut. So that's next. So same thing. I'm going to use this razor saw here. See if I can do this without cracking it. Okay, there's that side. Not too bad. That's a little crooked, but we'll see what happens. So now this side. And then take my cutter here and get rid of this. Like that. All right, with a quick test fit, it looks pretty good. So this part fits here. And I'm assuming that these doors rest up against this raised part here and here, and then this fits on here like this. So I think the next thing I need to do is I need to square these up right here. So I'm going to have to take my sander, and what I want to do is sand it a little more of a right angle to this part here, if that makes sense. So right now it's kind of at an angle, so I'll take my sander and sand it like that. See what happens. So let's get a sanding stick here. Let me find one. It's a little coarser. This is a 220. This is the larger size Infinity sanding stick. And I'm just going to do this. A little bit more, I think. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's a hideous sound, isn't it? Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's see. Whoops. Let's see how that fits. So put that there. That, and then let's put this here like that. Yeah, see, that's much better. Because what was happening is there was no seam between this and this. So, you know, in reality, the doors wouldn't open. But with it sanded, I think I'm going to have to sand a little bit more on that side there. With it sanded, it gives you a bit of a gap. So it's a little bit better. So let's see. I may have to do a little bit of shimming there. I don't know. That side looks really good. It looks pretty even. This part seems to be, but I think it's part of the mold, because I haven't cut this all the way to the part, the pour block, and it's kind of angled inward somewhat. So I may have to shim that up a little bit, but we'll see. I may not. This is my first ever resin conversion kind of thing, just for the record. So, you know, cut me some slack, folks. So we'll see. First, I'm going to sand this up a little bit just to smooth it out a little bit. And I'll use my 400 grit stick for that, just so it doesn't look fuzzy when I assemble it. Like that. And then I'll take my sanding sponge, my real fine sanding sponge, and just knock the burr off the edge there, because I don't want it to be raised, because that'll be pretty visible once it's primed and painted. So there we go. Knock it down on the inside a little bit. This is actually a good exercise, considering I have a project coming up that's going to have some pretty extensive work to be done. Okay, let's see how that fits now. Looks pretty good. Okay, so I've got this pretty much worked as much as I'm going to do, and I'm going to have to build up one side of it, this side here, because it's definitely at an angle compared to this, and it's a pretty good gap. So I'm going to have to build that up somehow. I'll figure that out in a few minutes, but right now I'm trying to clean up some of the mold seam lines and stuff like that. So on these fenders, there was a little bit of a flared out bit along the edge from the from the molding process. And knowing Volkswagens, as I do, since this isn't a cow bug, there ain't no flared fenders on these things, so because they kind of roll under on the edges. So that is what I did, is I got that all cleaned up and got the sharpness of the edge kind of toned down a little bit to more represent the real thing. So there's that. So knock down these running boards here a little bit. Like that. So now I'll start thinking about building this up. So I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to I got to cut down these door panels to put on the inside of the doors, and I need to figure out what I'm going to do about the glass. And considering how thick this is here, I may have to use the kit glass, but man, I really don't want to do that. So I'm going to have to, I'll take a look and see what I have. But these sideboards and all, and tailgate and all that kind of stuff, I'll mess with that later, once I have the majority of the body put together. So let's see, how am I going to approach this? See, this side here fits pretty good. I mean, you've got a gap, like, you know, where the door would be. So there's no issue there. But on that side, it's a pretty whopper of a gap. So I think what I'm going to do here, I'm going to cut these off and get these cut down. And I think what I'm going to do to make it easier to sand this and get it flush and whatever else I need to do, I think I'm going to build this part of it first, including the interior, get it painted and everything, and then mess with this. So first thing I need to do is I need to get rid of some flash here and cut these door panels down. So I'm just trimming it off with my cutter here, and then I'll sand it. See how that fits. Yeah, well, that looks pretty good. So I just need to cut it right on this line here. And I think perhaps what I'll do is I think I'll use this other blade and score it like this, then break it off and sand it. After a bit of scraping, you'll start to see a white, the plastic starts to turn white on the other side, shows you're getting real close to being through. Like that. And once you get close enough, you can just snap it off and then sand the edge smooth. Just have to be careful. Just like that. Then sand it flat. And glue that baby in there. But not upside down. Okay, touches top and bottom. Now I may have to sand that a little bit, maybe not. So it touches top and bottom. So you got to make sure that the bottom is lined up because that's what's going to fit in this trough here. So just make sure that it's flush. Keep you having to do quite so much sanding. That looks good, so hold it tight. Double check it. And hit it with some cement right here. And right there. I'm going to let that set up and then I'll hit the other side. Oh yeah, look at that. Awesome. Over. That side there. And that side there. And look and make sure there's no gap on top. There's not. Splendid. Looks really good. Once it dries, if I have to, sand it a little bit. Actually, I push it forward like that. Keep that sanding to a minimum. So, did that side. Now I'll do it to the other side. Okay, next I'm going to work on this part right here where the dashboard and everything goes. So I need part number 11. Which is this one here. Well, that's a crazy gate right there. So we got that. Then I need 39, which looks like some kind of a little table or something. Sticks out of the dashboard, maybe so they can put you know, maps or hot drinks or something like that. I'm kidding. Okay, and then we need number 9, which is the steering column, which is this here. And the stern wheel. And I may, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. Some of these components I'm going to have to paint before I actually assemble them, because it might be too hard to reach them once they're installed. So let's see. in looking at the instructions, it does not show this thing, so I'm going to have to chop that thing off. And I'm going to use my other cutter because that's pretty big. Like that. Well, that went flying. Okay, so there's that. Let me sand down a little bit. Doesn't look like there's any flash or anything. Now it's got a very rudimentary speedometer and, you know, an instrument cluster. So that's gonna have to, I'm gonna have to hit that with some dry brushing or something, because otherwise that's gonna be invisible. But anyway, so we got that. The little table. Get the burr off of that. Cut off the remainder of the sprue gates there. Steering column. Now again, I just got to say that that looks really good. There's virtually no mold seam lines on here. I mean, well, you barely see it. So let me clean these up, and we'll be ready to start gluing this stuff in. All right, let's start gluing this stuff in here. So this right here, the end of the steering column goes in that hole right there, and then whoops, that fits right there. Let's put a little cement. Like that. Okay, so we got that, and then this. Goes like that. So I'm gonna put a little cement in here, tack it in place. There. Like that. Make sure it's level. And then finally, the steering wheel. Okay. That needs a little bit more cement. And then the steering wheel, and it's showing that it goes on like that with one of the center supports facing up. looks pretty good. So let's see if that sticks in there, because that seems to not be sticking very well. But we shall see. Alright, so there's that. So let's set that aside to dry. So another thing I need to start thinking about is this roof panel here. So it's really super thin, so I think I can just cut that off. Well, of course my cutter's not going to go that far. So let's see. Well, I guess I'll just saw it. Time to think about replacing that saw blade. Okay, I'm going to have to do this a little bit off camera here. So there we have it. So now, all right, let's see how that fits. It's a little, oh, you know what? That's okay, I think. Let's see. All right, that's going to take some work, because this is supposed to be totally smooth on the top. So I'm going to have to glue it in place. Then I'm going to have to sand these edges down and fill the gap there. So, yeah. Let me make sure these things are cut off good here. And these are not shown in the instructions, so I'm going to cut them off in case they're an obstruction and I just can't tell. They're supposed to be there. Well, wouldn't be seeing them anyway. Alright, let's see how that fits now. Whoop. So I'm going to have to use some stupendous glue on this to get it to stick. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of scraping right here. See if I can get it to fit a little more flush. Okay, since I goofed up on my video, I was able to get the edges sanded down, and it fit pretty smooth. I mean, I'm gonna have to do some work on it, but no big deal. So I'll put some putty in there and sand it. And I think what I'm gonna have to do though, first I'm gonna have to put some super glue along this joint right here, just to make sure it's sealed up good. But I'll do that in a minute. Right now, I've cut the, I need to do the seats, and I've already done one of them. So what I need is parts 4, 3, and 2 number 5s. So we got 4 right here. Then we have number 3 right here. And then 2 number 5s. There and there. Okay, so need to cut these off. Now there is a seam around here that I need to sand off. You know, I wonder if I can scrape it. Yeah, I'll scrape it and then I'll sand it. And a trick when sanding stuff like this, or trying to clean it up, and I'll show you on the other side, is you can tell when you're getting it flush whenever you remove all of the clear. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I don't know if you can see it, but the plastic has a bit of reflective quality right now. So once I start sanding, you can see along that seam, hopefully, right there. It's still shiny, but it's dull where I've sanded it. So once you've sanded it to where it is all dull, you know you've got the seam line removed. Like that. Pretty simple, just a little trick. Not really a trick, I mean a lot of people know about it, it's just, it's kind of helpful. Make sure to get these corners here. Now you can see some white there. That's just discoloration from stress on the plastic whenever I cut the sprue gates. So that won't show up under paint. Okay, just like that. So do the same thing here. Now on the seats, the seat cushions, as opposed to the backrest, I am not going to sand that seam. I want that seam there, and the reason I do is because, now I don't know if they're like this on these World War II vintage vehicles, but the top of the seat cushion, the seat cover, is stitched along that top edge. Like this is a long strip with that stitched to form the cover to fit over the cushion. So that's good. So now I can put these in place. Excuse me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let these dry before I glue the seat backs on. So I'm just going to put these in place like that, and then hit it with some cement. There. 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 And there. So let me pick this up and take a look at it and make sure that those rails are vertical, and they are. So I need to let those dry really good. Then I can glue the backs on. Okay, so for this, I'm going to use some thicker cement because so let's put that there. So I want some working time. That's why I'm using a thicker stuff. So I want to make sure this is lined up in the back like that. That looks pretty good. So it looks pretty good. So I'll do the same thing here. This is a relatively new addition to my arsenal of glues. I mainly wanted to try it out, and I went to a nice little model shop in Las Vegas when I went there with my wife for a she had to do some work there for her job. So there we go. So let me make sure that's pushed in properly. Yep, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to let those dry really well, and then we'll come back. But anyway, as I was saying, this glue, I've been wanting to try one of the thicker Tamina cements, and they had this in stock at the shop I went to, so I thought, yeah, I'm going to give it a try, and it seems pretty good. I like it. It's good for some things, because I'm not sure Model Master is going to be around, because Testors has discontinued the Model Master line of products, and once this runs out, I may not have any more. So I like to keep a thicker, slower setting glue on hand. So anyway, for whoever cares. So we'll let this stuff dry. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, sorry folks, but I've been monkeying around with this off camera because it's been kind of tricky, and I would have just gotten my head in the way. So here's what I had to do. I cut this off further in the back because it was impeding this sliding up where it needed to go. Then, in looking at the illustrations and stuff like that, these running boards should be a little bit better fit as far as the angle to the rear fenders. So that's what I've been working on. So what I did is I put this in place, held it like I did earlier, and then through whittling and cutting and chopping and so on and so forth, I have got it to fit. And it fits nicely, and I'm not going to have to shim this side like I thought. So I can glue this lower portion here now that it fits better. And then I can glue this headache board, or whatever you want to call it, a little bit better in place. So it'll be that, and then I'll have to glue and clamp this onto that, and then there's going to be some sanding and filling and stuff like that going on. But you know, it's no big deal. Shouldn't be too difficult. But it fits a lot better than it did. Okay, so that's where I'm at. So now that I've got that hashed out, I can get these, pretty much everything's ready to go. So I can get these parts in place. I need to determine if I'm going to glue these first. I think I am, but I don't know how to figure it out. But I also need to glue this in place here. And the way this goes, well, first I need to cut these off because those don't go there. And then this glues in here. There's a little stop there that goes right up against it, and like that. So I'm going to glue that in place, and hopefully it'll all fit nicely. So I think what I'm going to do first, hopefully without knocking the steering wheel off, I'm going to just kind of an edge right there that needs to be removed from the molding process. All right, let's take a look. Yep, that looks pretty good. I'm digging it. So, with it in place, I wonder, kaboom, like that. Kapow, like that. So that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry. It actually shows gluing it to the floorboard first, but I kind of like this way because I want it to fit really well up here. So let's see what it looks like. Yeah, see, I would have had a big gap on the top, and that would not have been good. So, yep, I chose wisely. So I'm gonna let that sit in there like that and let it dry. And once it's all nice and solid, then I'll take it off. I glue on the center tunnel and those parts, and I think I'll save the seats and glue those in after I paint everything. But yeah, then everything will be ready to paint. So let's let that dry really good. Okay, next I can do the central tunnel there. So we need A21. And A13. Got the wrong number on there. It says 13, but those are the windshield wipers. So I need A9. And 12. And yeah, that's it. So let's get these cleaned up. All right, so now I can glue these on here. So I'll probably start with this one here because it's going to be the one that's most, no, it's not that difficult. There's that. Let's get this. Okay, this tunnel needs to be sanded because there's some protruding ejector pin marks. Okay, so little bit of glue there, and there should be sufficient. Let's put some down the sides too, shall we? And then the gear shift. And parking / e-brake. Whoa. Okay. Something is amiss. I need to drill those holes out just a little bit. So, getting my handy dandy Micro Mark Small Tool Specialist drill set. Let's see. I will bore those out ever so slightly. Just so happened I picked the right one the first time, which was a 0.8. All right. Let's try this again. Wunderbar. Much better. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, so that takes care of that. So let's take a look. I think perhaps I'm ready to paint the inside of this. So since it's time for paint, I think I can call this video done. So next time when we come back, I can spray the inside portions of the actually, first things first, I almost forgot the rear view mirror. So I shall glue that in place, because that's definitely something I want to have a good glue bond. And painting sometimes can weaken it. So we'll put that right there like that. Turn it to the appropriate angle so the driver can see what he's doing. And there we go. Now I can call it quits on this one. Next time when we come back, we will begin painting, and I will paint the interior here, the interior of this, and the seats. And then we can continue construction. So that ends part 2 of the CMK 1/35 scale Volkswagen Type 825 pickup. So if you enjoyed this video, please click the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want to see some more exciting adventures in model building, click the subscribe button. And until next time, thanks for watching, and I will see you all later.